Okay, so the short story that I read was Desiree's Baby by Kate Chopin, and of course the PowerPoint is by me. A little bit about Kate, her biography. She has published novels. Two of the most popular are At Fault and The Awakening. The Awakening is her most famous book, and then she has about 100 short stories. Her best-known work focuses on the lives of the sensitive, intelligent women set in Louisiana, and she has work published in magazines, which some of them are Vogue, Atlantic Monthly, Youth's Companion, and Century. Her early life, she was born February 8, 1850 in St. Louis, Missouri. She was bilingual and bicultural, so she spoke both French and English, which this had an influence in her work. She had much about French life in her writings because of her bilingual and bicultural experiences. She attended St. Louis Academy of the Sacred Heart and the Academy of Visitation. The Academy of Visitation she went for only 1 year, but then she went to the St. Louis Academy of the Sacred Heart for the rest of her schooling. She was mentored by many women throughout her life, which is why most of her work is about intelligent, strong women. She had a lot of nurturing growing up, which led to her work, and as stated on the previous slide about the work being about intelligent, strong women, critics believe that experiencing pain in her life gave her strong writing which the trauma she experienced. Her dad was killed in a railroad accident when she was young. Her great-grandmother died also. She lived in St. Louis during the Civil War, which supported both the Confederacy and the Union. And then her brother enlisted in the Confederacy and was captured and died of typhoid fever. So all of these events led to her success in writing. Later in life, when she passed, Chopin loved attending fairs, so she would always she bought season tickets to the St. Louis World Fair, which was, and the year that she went, it was extremely hot and unlike any other year before. She returned home with a pain in her head, and when she went to the doctor, they thought that it was cerebral hemorrhage, which is just a bleeding in the brain. And she died August 22nd after slipping into unconsciousness and never woke up. Post-death understanding of her work and appreciating it after she died, many people appreciated her work more and she became more famous, which is like any other person who passes away. She's known as one of the America's Essential Authors. She was published in 400 journal articles and 60 books, as well as 160 PhD dissertations. They all wanted to mention her work in their findings. And today, a bust is dedicated to Kate in Central West End Association of St. Louis, Missouri, so you can go and check that out. Because she was both born and died in St. Louis, Missouri, so they put a bust there in her honor. A summary of the story. So Desiree was a young woman, and she was adopted when she's just a baby because she was found at the gateway of Madame and Monsieur Valmonde's estate. She was found at the gateway. The Monsieur actually found her and then when she awoke, all she could say was Dada, and she just kept saying Dada because she was so young. So that plus their lack of having children made them fall in love with Desiree, and so they wanted to adopt her. 18 years later, Armand Ambigny was her lover. He found her standing at the gateway when she was 18 and instantly fell in love. Desiree's family wanted to make sure that Armand knew that they were unaware of where Desiree came from, that wasn't her biological daughter, and he said that he wanted to marry her anyways, and he didn't care where she came from as long as their love was there. He even also stated that he knew that she didn't have her own real name because she was adopted into the family. She wasn't for sure like what her name was, what her heritage was, and he said that he would give her his name, and he didn't care. So then Madame eventually goes to visit Desiree and Armand, and because Desiree had a little baby boy, and the baby, Madame notices something very interesting about the baby boy and even asks what Armand thought of the baby, and Desiree said that he was glad to have a son so he'd carry on his name, but Desiree doesn't understand what's wrong with the child until 3 months of age. And then there's an example of othering shown in the story because people in their community would always come by and want to check out what their baby looked like, and because of this, they were basically looking at the baby like it was put on the museum. So Armand seemed to mistreat, he had anger as a result of the baby's not being what they thought that he should be. He mistreated his slaves more, and Desiree actually did not make the connection about what was going on until she started comparing their son with a little slave owner boy that they had, and he was only 1/4 black. But so Desiree finally realized what was wrong, and Armand was very angry about it because, I mean, it didn't seem like he really thought that it was true until Desiree had brought it up to him, and he never accused Desiree of cheating with any of the black servants because Desiree and Armand didn't seem black, but he did want Desiree to move out because of the black baby. He didn't think that Desiree was white. He thought that she was black because their baby looked like a little black boy. And so Desiree went and left to go back to live with their mother, and then Armand was burning some possessions that he had in the house of the babies and also of his own and also Desiree's to just get rid of them. And he came across some of these letters. There was one letter that was unopened and unread, and it was from his mother addressed to his father. And when you figure out what the letter says, Armand ends up being the one that is mixed and not Desiree. So that was kind of a plot twist at the end of the story that you never really knew what happened with the baby until you find out that Armand's mother ends up being the mixed. And she was lucky enough to have a baby that didn't look like he was black at all, and she also passed as white, but Armand and Desiree's baby looks black. So, an analysis of the text, people had invisible identity was Armand's identity because you couldn't tell that he was black, and his mother was actually 1/4 black, and he had no idea. We had no idea until the letter at the end of the story. Some critics believe that he knew this all along because at the end of the story, he didn't seem as surprised by the letter as not. But he could represent, with knowing that he is black, he could represent that America's whole relationship with the racist past just by being black. He was passing as white for all his life, and just by being black he could lose his property. He would live with paranoia inside of him because he's not who he thinks that he is, and he could also represent the nation that we built upon racism because we started owning people, and so he could represent that as well. Passing as white, as Armand did, is another example. You can look the part as white but not really be white. So his treatment of slaves was interesting because he owned slaves. When he discovers his own son is black, he starts getting abusive towards the slaves, which some critics believe that he secretly knew that he was black, and that's the reason for that. And Desiree didn't show any signs of being black, so in my opinion, that also led Armand to know that he was the one. That's why he so severely went the other way when he figured out that his son showed that he was black as well. And, yeah. So this is an example as passing as white, that you may not necessarily know where you're from, but if you look the part, then you can be white in our society. The dominant group, which would be the white people, because in the story, white people were the ones who owned land and owned property, and then the black people were the ones who had to serve as slaves. Armand's reason for burning his son's possessions, for me, it kind of felt like he was kind of burning the black out of the house, so to speak. He didn't want to remember anything about his son or about the fact that he truly inside is black, and he was putting that away until they had a son. So that could be another reason why he was trying to burn all of the belongings of his son. Social construction, so the treatment of the people, the white people receive the most privileges because they are the dominant group. They could own land, they could have luxuries and possessions. Societal views about whites versus blacks. Blacks could not own property, they had to be slaves, and whites could own land and vote and be free. And then Armand, if he was discovered as black, he would lose everything that he's had, all the luxuries he's had, all of the rights that he's had, and all the slaves that he's also owned, and he would go into a life of slavery because he was considered black. And then the privileges, they aligned with the dominant group in the story because the blacks did not have any control over anything. They had to be slaves, they had to be owned. Armand enjoys the perks of living successfully. He likes people coming over, showing off his luxuries, owning a lot of things, and then he enjoys the company of the people who want to come over, who he wants to show off his possessions to because he has been successful. And if you think about it, it seems as though he's a little bit more braggy than normal, and that would kind of go with the critics who's saying that all along he knew that he was black, showing off like, hey, I'm black and I still have all these luxuries. Thank you for listening into my presentation, and this is a citation of the information that I got off for Kate's biography. Thank you.